Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Bodhi Aldridge. Bodhi lives today with his wife of 40 years by the beach near Byron Bay, Australia, and has 4 children and 10 grandchildren. He has a daily practice of surfing, yoga, and music and enjoys traveling around the world. It wasn't always this way, though, as 25 years ago, while building his marriage, family, and thriving legal practice with multiple offices and a beautiful home, Bodhi lost touch with himself. Thankfully, his wife saw he wasn't passionate about being a lawyer, and 20 years ago, she helped him sell his legal practice so he could transition into coaching. Bodhi now works as a business coach for executives at Netflix, Tesla, Google, YouTube, Amazon, and Goldman Sachs, helping them to navigate their hero's journey so they can reconnect with their true self and purpose and experience true freedom. I'm excited to have Bodhi on the show today to share how he helps men overcome a distracted mind, resistance to life, and their sense of overwhelm so they can rise to be the true leaders they were born to be. And with that, Bodhi Aldridge, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. That intro gets better every time. Thank you.
Well done, my man. It's a great story, dude. And I'm excited. I think we've talked for half an hour before hitting go, and we probably had 2 episodes already. I think if we would have been if I'd have been more timely with my record button, but this is going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. And so thrilled to have you here from across the other side of the globe, right? You're coming into us from Australia, which I don't think I've had an Australian guest on. I've had South Africa on before and the UK, but no one from your side of the hemisphere, I think.
There we go. Yeah, beautiful and lovely to be here. And it's interesting in the West, isn't it? There's so many common themes on what we're going through as men.
Yes.
So great to share, and the work you're doing is so profound as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so thank you for being here. And so with that, let's talk a bit about growing up you grew up in Australia with what was your family situation like? What was life like?
Yeah. As we discussed, and one of the themes that we'll talk about is the hero's journey. And I'll put that lens through my journey. And for the listeners, the hero's journey is an archetypal journey. There's a lot of work out there. I'm sure a lot of the listeners have seen the work of, Joseph Campbell, who pioneered it, researching traditional cultures and noticing that there's a hero's journey and a heroine journey. And this archetypal journey, this collective consciousness informs us, whether we're aware of it or not. And there are different stages to the journey. And so my journey, being a young boy, I was the youngest of 3. And when I was 7, my parents separated and my father left. And I have a relationship with him, yet, didn't see a lot of him. And we talk about the milestones in our journey. Obviously, as a 7-year-old, it was not a violent relationship. There was obviously a lot going on. Yet, I remember my sister was 16. She left. My brother, who was 5 years older than me, just got angry with the world. And I took on, the responsibility of looking after my mother and becoming a little man. And not that she needed it, but as a 7-year-old, and as a boy, it was like, okay. And as we know, those early patterns sit with us. And so I kind of took on a lot of responsibility. My mum was working 3 jobs, single mum. We were in social housing, and her main thing was to give us an education. That was her big thing because, essentially she had been a middle-class woman, given up her career. And when the divorce happened, basically, again, we were living in social housing. She was working 3 jobs and she just wanted to make sure we had an education. And so, my mum taught me a lot, about hard work, about education, about values, about commitment. And, that informed me. And I remember in my teens, we were talking earlier about our upbringing, and I was brought up a Catholic, even though I'd say I'm probably more connected with spirit these days than any particular denomination. Yet as a 16-year-old Catholic boy, which is a really important part of the hero's journey for the teenagers, anyone who remembers or anyone who has teenage boys, all of those existential questions, Eric, were coming up.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of life? What is it all about? And I remember I thought about becoming a Marist brother. I was brought up by the brothers, and I had that connection with the divinity, as a Catholic boy in a Catholic school. And I remember it well, reflecting on those bigger questions. And I didn't, obviously, yet it was an interesting reflection point. Because what happened then, 3 or 4 years later, I met my wife at 16 at school. She was 15. I was in an all boys school, and then we went to a co-educational school, and fell in love. And by 20 we had children.
Wow.
Yeah, we both went to university, married, and so suddenly, Eric, I was propelled from being no role model of the masculine, with my father leaving, to suddenly having to go, what is it to be a father? What is it to be a husband? And I think that's when I really started the inquiry into what I now look back as the hero's journey. At the time was just an exploration of where are the role models? Where are the teachers? Where are the guides? I don't have anybody. I think I had a couple of uncles who'd take me to the beach now and again. And that was about the only, apart from my teachers and sports coaches. And that's been my journey then. So out of that, with the support of my wife, as you mentioned, really diving deep, we had 4 children by the time we were in our late 20s. And suddenly, the one thing Mum supported me with was to go to law school and become an attorney. Yet, again, as you know, being a young attorney, 4 children, my wife was a teacher, the pressure that a lot of our listeners are going through, who I've been through. And what I realized in my late 20s was I'd lost touch with my true self. And I love the podcast name about authenticity, because I just got caught up in all of the roles and responsibilities and obligations of being a dad and being a husband and being a lawyer. And, obviously a part of me was doing my best as a provider, bringing in the income. My wife was working as well. Yet I realized that I'd just lost myself, my true self, true self.
I'm so curious, Bodhi, because some of your story, it just really resonates with me as well. So your wife, did you say your wife stayed at home, or was she a teacher, or was
she was a part-time teacher? Yeah,
part-time
so she
teacher.
worked 3 days. Yeah.
So but you're the primary breadwinner, and
correct.
You're a young man. You've got 4 children at this point. I'm curious, maybe just to step back a little bit. Did you know? So you say social housing. I'm thinking that's government housing. That's like
correct
assisted housing. Okay, so your family is just sort of getting by. Your mom's working 3 jobs, trying to provide for your brother and sister and you. And your dad's completely out of the picture at this point, or?
Yep. He remarried and left. He was in a different country at the time. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you're really kind of. You all are sort of on your own. Was your family unit, did it stay, do you feel like it almost got tighter when your dad, did it have to get tighter, or were, like you said, one of your brothers was really angry?
Yeah.
Was it sort of kind of
I think the savior, I guess, for want of a better word, was that my mum had her mother and her sisters nearby.
Okay. So she had
that extended family. And my maternal grandmother was a real matriarch.
Yeah.
So, we'd get together as a family, on weekends and things, just over a meal and things. So I think, to your point, if it wasn't for that, it would be very nuclear family. So that helped a lot. I think it helped my mum a lot, just knowing that she had some siblings there.
And then, so once you get ready to go off to university, is that in Australia? Is in the US, school has gotten, especially lately, but 20 years ago it was different, but it's still expensive. But it's ridiculously expensive now. And do you remember what that was like as you approached it? Was there thought that, hey, you may just have to go get a job, or was it, no, you're going to go to university, we'll figure out a way? Or how does it work?
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, because, my children have been to university, and obviously the fees are a lot more expensive. And when I went, 2 things happened. One was we had an amazing prime minister, president, I guess, who brought in free university education, which was, there was a window there of maybe 10 or 15 years where, he was a very liberal minded government. Yeah. And that was a huge help, to your point, because I was able to go to university without incurring the big debt, yet I still ended up having to work as well because I didn't have any other backstop. So I was working. I went then and worked 3 jobs while I was getting myself through university, bar work, that sort of thing. So it was, my friends now who I grew up with, of course, who didn't have children that young, now that they've got children, they look back and go, how did you guys do that?
Yeah.
It's that resilience, that commitment, that desire. It's like
amazing, right?
when you're in it, you're just doing it,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where that's where it's almost like when you're in that fight, you don't have the luxury to think about some of the other things, right? And I want to go there when I was mentioning before, like some of the connection between your story and my own, and this notion of like a provider, raise, take care of the family, raise the family, without really questioning. But before that, when you go to university and you start to think about getting your degree, are you planning to be a lawyer in that moment? Or are you thinking I'm just going to university, or what was the plan?
I think pretty quickly the responsibility of children, it was, I got to step up here and provide.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the most logical way, as challenging as it was to get my law degree and get going. Yeah. And, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and law itself is just a big study.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it's a big degree. It's not overly complex. It's not like doing rocket science, I don't think, but the volume in understanding the law and the nuances and the amount you have to learn. And I'm sure my wife will attest that I probably wasn't much fun to live with exam time. Oh. But as you share, what I really committed to in that place was, I'm going to give these kids an education and a house, to live in. I'm absolutely committed to that. Even though I wasn't passionate about being a lawyer, there was a part of me that was like, okay, the next 20 years I'm in. Yeah. Let's do this.
Yeah. And I think that's a common thing. At least I can it really resonates with me, because I felt the same. Like, I'm not necessarily like my first job out of college, I got a finance degree and I went into banking. Wasn't like, yes, I've arrived. I'm so happy I'm this banker. It was, I liked banking. It was cool. I enjoyed learning about businesses. I enjoyed meeting with executives and the owners of these businesses, but I didn't feel like I'm a banker. I just thought I'm going to be the best banker I can be so I can elevate and make more money. And every year I want to try to make more money, because more money meant more safety, security, and provision for my family. And that's what I saw my role as, was to provide for my family. And I remember being so afraid that my wife, who had stopped working when we started having children, when she had our first child, she stopped working. So our income effectively was cut in half in that moment. And like, oh man, I got to make up that gap, get back to even, and then grow from there. But I remember being so afraid that if I fail, she's going to have to go back to work, which means our daughter's going to have to go to daycare. And neither one of us wanted that to happen. And so there was this pressure of, you got to provide, bro, because there's no backstop, right? If you fail, we know the answer here. It's daycare, it's your wife's going. And so it was just go. Like, you didn't have time to question, am I in the right mode? It was just like, this is the mode, go hard, win,
Yeah.
And until we got to a point where it's like, okay, now we have options and choices, that I start to sort of think, am I doing the right thing? Right? Am I in the right place?
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I know for me, out of my childhood, I was very controlling because I was so scared. So that fear of not having anything to fall back on,
right,
and that fear of not succeeding, quote unquote, financially for the family, it was a real visceral fear. And as I say, one of my patterns, and we've all got our patterns, was I thought if I could control the external world, I'll feel safe. And if I feel safe, that'll be okay. And of course, it's not sustainable. And my dear wife put up with it for many years, because it has its place, yet it just became, too controlling, too much fear.
Yeah.
so yeah, and again, if we go back to Maslow, it's that, we've got to get some of those foundational things, or at least feel like we've got some of those foundational things in place. Yeah.
Right. How did it? So your wife, I talked about in the intro from the background material I was able to find on you. Your wife recognized you don't seem like you're in a good spot. Like you don't really seem like you really love being a lawyer. How did she come to that conclusion? How did it manifest? And then what did it take in order to unwind what was a thriving legal practice and probably a lucrative one, I had to imagine?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of steps. So I moved out of corporate law, big law in the big firm, and was running my own regional practice. And again, it was a matter of how do I create a level of a lifestyle, and that was working to some extent. Yet the real first pivot, again with the absolute support of my wife, was I went into nature. So I was in my late 20s, and I knew I just got caught up in this identity of father, lawyer, business. And as we discussed briefly, one of the things I teach and do is a lot of nature-based retreats for men. Because what I did at the time is I just took myself off into the rainforest here in Australia, in Northern Australia. And I remember one of my mentors at the time, he said, just take yourself away. Just go and sit in the forest. Yeah. Yeah. And my wife was really supportive, because you can imagine with 4 children and suddenly I'm going away for a couple of weeks on my own. It's like, hang on a tick, where was that in the script?
And when do I get to go, right? She's
yeah, exactly. Exactly. That was a real pivot point with her support, because what happened, and the reason I love running nature-based retreats is, as we know, when we're connected with nature, in stillness, in silence, we start to drop a lot of the masks, a lot of the armor, a lot of the identity of our false self, our egoic self, our limited self. Yeah, and we do that either through just being still and silent in nature, or with facilitation and practices reflection. And so for me, literally being in silence on my own for a couple of weeks, you're just with yourself, and you start to notice, how you've got caught up with this false identity. And authenticity to me starts with connecting with your true self. Yeah. Yeah, not your inauthentic self. Again, the masks that we wear. And so that was a pivotal point. And I say that's when I reconnected with my true self. And I've hung on to that, through my practice, yoga, meditation, surfing, because I realized when I did, I'm like, this is worthy of committing to. In all the busyness of children, grandchildren, marriage, business, how can I stay connected to my true self? Yeah. And that was such a key part. And I'd like to think that, obviously not all of the time, yet I can come back to that true self regularly, because that's my navigator. That's the voice in me, that's still quiet voice, that higher self that really can guide our listeners, if you can come back to that part of you.
Yeah. And I love that as well. As we were talking, I lead some outdoor sort of rites of passage events. And it's a lot about getting into nature initially, and to, just like you said, strip away that outer layer that we tend to put out there. Like, I can do anything, handle anything. And then you start to realize, whoa, I'm in here above my head. Like I'm way above my head here. I could die out here. Like it's remote. When you get to nature, and to me, we talked before, when you're close to nature, you're close to God, right? And so to me, it's like you're connecting more with that divinely created self, like that you were created by a creator. In my view, my belief, you're created by a creator who doesn't do things willy-nilly. He had a plan. He had an imprint for you, right? And when we get close, we get quiet, we pull away the distractions and get into nature. it can help us get connected with that voice. You talk about hearing that voice and feeling that like call to this is what I've got for you. Right. And I think it requires, getting quiet. There's a great book. I don't know if you've read it, called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. And he talks about this need to do something fairly scary. Like, there's a question if you're going to be able to complete it. Rule number one, it's funny, is don't die. Like, whatever you're going to go do, make sure you don't die. But it should be scary enough that you sort of question, can I complete whatever this is? And then be quiet and be bored. Like, our brains need to be bored, need to be able to really truly hear and listen what's being either spoken to us or through us, or what we're kind of picking up. And how we used to, if you look throughout history, men used to do that a lot. They would go off on these adventures or rites of passage or masogis, and that was part of it. Like, you're going to change when you're out there. And when you come back, you'll be a different man. And that's the man we need you to be to lead the tribe. And we've gotten away from that, but it is so important if we can just get out into nature, even if it's for short periods of time, what we can allow. But man, if you got up at 3 a.m. and went out and said, I'm going to be out here for 12 hours, you'd learn some things in just a 12-hour period, if you just went out in the forest.
I think it's a relatively simple step for men who are wondering, where do I start this inquiry? And on the hero's journey, the first part of the hero's journey, often we resist the call, as you know, that whisper, for me at 16, and that's often when we're closest to the Holy Grail. The hero's journey is searching for the Grail, and the Grail is true freedom. Yeah. And then for a lot of us, we hear the call, and often nature can be a wake up. Again, if you look at the lines of development, the wake up, clean up, grow up, like it's a wake up when we wake up to our true selves. And I agree. I think nature, even if there's a local park, a tree, just something to make that shift. And once you hear the call, once you wake up, to that there's something else going on, then, as you know, one of the steps on the hero's journey is to kind of find a mentor or find other men. Yeah. As you say, in traditional wisdom, I've studied traditional wisdom and sat with the elders. It was all done by the campfire in nature for men. Listen, look, and learn from elders, mentors, peers. That's how we learned. And I think for the listeners, if you haven't already, got a men's circle or a mentor or men who call you forth, not collude with your victim story.
Yeah, well said.
Go find it,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So let's talk a bit more about your story in terms of, all right, so now your wife is like, hey, I don't think you really want to be, I can sense you want to be a lawyer. You go off into nature, you come back, and now it's what happens then? You decide, you're right. Let's do something different.
Yeah, it took a little while. That was the first part. And then the next step was I actually got a business coach into my legal practice because I realized, okay, well, I want to make this more efficient. Still had 4 children at school, big school fees. Responsibilities. And it was at that time, the business coach, she came in, and after working with me for a month or two, she actually also said, you're not that passionate about being a lawyer, are you? And I'm like, And she said, why don't you come and train with me, and I'll help you get the legal practice ready to sell. That'll give you a 12-month buffer to go and build your coaching practice. Okay. Come and train with me. I'll help you get clients. And, again, we were talking earlier about purpose, how purpose reveals itself from the inside out. Yeah. I didn't sit there and go, I want to be a business coach. I'm going to sell my legal practice. I'm going to leave, but the inquiry, the support of my wife, the deeper work, the first move was to get a coach for my business, which turned out to be a life-changing move, which set me on a whole nother trajectory. For the last 20 odd years, where I've been coaching and facilitating leaders around the globe. And so I love that, Eric, and again, for the listeners, meaning and purpose is such a big part of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
You've got to cultivate the inner state. Yeah. The outer will reveal itself.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I was able to, I sold my legal practice. I actually kept a part of it for a year and merged with a colleague who had another legal practice. That helped with the income.
Yeah.
My business coach trained me up, helped me get some clients. And before I knew it, I had a book of clients. I was coaching around Australia. I was bringing in pretty much the same income. I was still working hard. It was a whole new industry. And as you know, finding clients, supporting clients, takes a lot of energy and focus. Yet I think my wife saw so much more passion and purpose in me. It was like I had meaning, I had a reason. And I think that really helped, and helped the children as well, because, what I teach for men and any of the listeners, particularly with your beloved, the most attractive thing to the feminine is a man who's present, on purpose, and brings passion to life. And if you can cultivate that from the inside out, your beloved will enjoy it, your children will enjoy it, your clients will enjoy it. And so, that was the next big pivot. And it was scary. The comfort zone, the book you mentioned, I talk a lot about comfort zones.
Yeah.
Yep. And in flow states, because I do a lot of work around embodied presence for men. And flow is just presence in action. Yeah. And, we know there's lots of studies around flow states. We know in sport, anyone who's done sport, you get into that flow state. What I teach men is how to bring that into your life. It's possible.
Yeah.
There's 2 trains that leave your house every morning, Eric. One is the resistance train. One is the flow train. And you get to decide which one am I going to catch.
Yeah.
And a lot of men are resisting life. They're resisting parenting. They're resisting their job. Instead of going, how do I cultivate flow? And the comfort zone is, in flow states, they talk about every day about 1% to 4% on the edge of your comfort zone. As men, we got to be leaning in a little bit into the edge. Yeah. And again, it's not, don't kill yourself.
Right.
But it's also not being stuck in your comfort zone. So you've got to find ways to lean in, whether it is, for a lot of my clients, one of the most uncomfortable things is cultivating a daily practice. Just sitting still for 5 minutes a day, quiet, no distractions, is so uncomfortable for the thinking mind. Yet, as you know, whether it's reflection, stillness, prayer, ultimately you start to quieten that mind. And that uncomfortableness, that's the key. If you can just break through that in a loving, gentle way, you will transform your life.
Man, that's so powerful. I'm curious what your take is, because I think there is huge value in that silence as well, and in that stillness. And I've had clients ask me, can I listen to music during that? Can I listen to something that inspires me or that's relaxing? And I have a take on that. I'm curious what yours is, if you have any view on something like that.
Well, if we go to context, so context obviously gives meaning to the experience. And what we know is, so anyone who's a business owner out there, anyone who's a leader, the studies are the most effective leaders have a daily reflective practice. What they're doing is they're reflecting on the way they showed up, the way they have to show up, what's coming up today. Yeah. Now, listening to music often is, the context is relaxation. It's not reflection. It's a type of, I guess, reflection, but can you see the difference? So if it relaxes you, and that's what you're looking for, to kind of switch off a little bit of the busy mind, then that's okay. Yet just know it's not meditation in its purest sense. Yes. It's not embodied presence in its purest sense. And it's interesting with the masculine and feminine energy, which again, if we have time, we can talk about. So the masculine energy, the traditional cultures, the Buddhist teachings, the Hindu teachings, the masculine energy is about stillness. Yeah, it's about presence. It's that vertical line of development, the line of being. The feminine energy finds stillness through movement.
Yeah.
So you'll see the feminine will dance, will move, will listen to music.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you talk to anyone who's more in their feminine, and again, it's not gender based, yet a lot of women in their feminine, they'll go, I don't want to sit cross-legged and look at the wall all day.
Yeah.
But let me do some movement, let me do some sacred dance, and I'll absolutely center myself.
Yeah.
And so this is the territory to explore for the listeners.
Yeah, it's interesting because and I totally agree. I think I love what you said there about if music is designed to relax you, it's really not. You're not in a reflective state. And I would say if the goal is meditation and contemplation, music is sort of a buffer to keep you from that. It's designed to say my brain is usually getting all these inputs all day long, tons of digital inputs, and I'm so afraid of silence and stillness that can I have just a little bit of input? Can I have a little music?
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah,
yes, if you absolutely require it, but it's the stepping stone to know, right? It's a stepping stone to real. If you're looking for music to relax you so you can go to sleep or something like different, but if it's about meditation, to me, the value is in truly getting quiet and still.
Yeah. I'd agree. And visualizations with music in the background are popular. There's lots of apps where if you want to visualize. And again, visualization is different to pure meditation and embodied presence.
Yeah. Talk about, if you would, I know your experience would say that men are distracting themselves from presence, resisting life, and they have a sense of overwhelm. How is that manifest or how are you seeing that when you're interacting with clients? Where does that show up?
Yeah, what I notice is, and again, for the listeners, just feel into it yourselves. When we meet the world as men, particularly when we're in our defenses, there's three responses you're going to have. One is you're going to react. The other is you're going to distract. And the third is you're going to repress. And so that's what's going on. And again, for the listeners, just reflect. Notice how much in the last week you've reacted to a situation. Someone cutting you off in the traffic, the children not doing what you want, your football team losing. It's like this reaction, the triggers is a common response. It's a feelings response. It's often an unconscious response. And that's where the body-mind connection comes in. Often the external world happens and suddenly unconsciously we react. Yeah. And anger is a big one for men. And so, notice that and find ways to get support with that.
Yeah.
Repression, typically there's a lot of men, and again, we can generalize, because a lot of men have been lost in what is it to be a man? What is masculinity? A lot of men collapse. They're really soft.
Yeah.
They've really repressed. They don't know how to feel their feelings. They don't know how to stand tall with their spine. They don't know how to lean into life. They're constantly feeling they've got to please their wife or please the boss, and they're repressing life. So it's another way that we defend ourselves. So some men may not be that overt reactive type. But they may be the type that just represses and suppresses, which again can lead to things like depression.
Yes.
And then the other one, which has become accelerated in the last 10 or 15 years, is we distract ourselves. And we're distracting ourselves because we're unwilling to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And so we do that. We work harder, we train harder, we drink more, we eat more, we party more, or we social media more.
Yep.
The one big feedback I get when I work with couples is, can you just get him off his phone?
Yeah.
Like this incredible psychology, the dopamine hit from the phone, the screen, running down the rabbit hole of YouTube or your favorite sport or whatever, is just a distraction from being present.
Yeah.
And if you're not present for your children and your wife, we know the studies around embodied presence, the most effective relationships come from presence. And so what I'm saying is what I find distraction, because distraction is the thinking mind avoiding the moment. So to your point, what I often work with, and it's not a linear process, is let's just unwind this mind a little bit. And remember, most of us, our thinking mind is like a really fast train. We're in overstimulus, 10, 20, 30 years of emails and busyness and, social media. And so if you're going to stop a fast train, you don't jump in front of it.
Yeah.
We just got to take our time. Going back to the reflection and stillness, we just want to slow this train down, because if you slow it down, you can be more present, less distracted. And the biggest asset we have as men, please, to all the listeners, hear this. The one asset and the biggest asset you have as a man is your attention. Where your attention goes, energy flows. And if you can master where your attention goes, you can create the life that you want, the health that you want, the wealth that you want, the relationships you want, the freedom that you're looking for, true freedom. But if your attention is being distracted and you're running down those rabbit holes, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definition of insanity, as you know, Eric, for the listeners. Yeah.
Same thing over and over.
Exactly. Just don't expect a different. Exactly. Like if you're not mastering your attention, as challenging as that may sound, it's easier than you think. But if you don't master it, you're not going to get a different outcome. Yeah. And if you want a different outcome between yourself, myself, all the great work out there are tools, there are practices. Yeah. If you master your attention, you can reach true freedom, which, as you know, is the name of my podcast. That's what we're looking for as men, true freedom.
Pardon the interruption, everyone. Do you ever feel like you're out of alignment with your true gifts, your passion, and your purpose for being on this earth? Do you feel like you're grinding it out each week with the appearance of success and still asking, is this it? If so, I get it. I've been right where you're at. And once I figured it out for myself, it's why I started coaching. Now I help my clients get back into alignment with their authentic self. I help them find meaning, purpose, joy, and energy in each day. Check out my website at ericsardina.com to learn more and to schedule a free 15-minute strategy session. And now, back to the show.
I love that, man. And man, distraction is such a big deal, because it's not only, it is the dopamine. So it's addictive, right? It's addictive. We have this tool that we carry around with us everywhere that is, I've said this many times on my show, social media, the iPhone, technology, it's neither good or bad. It's a tool like any tool. If it's a hammer, it can be used to build a house or to cave in your skull, right? It's the user. At the same time, this is a thinking hammer, right? This tool anticipates, knows what I like, shows me those things over and over again. So despite my intention of, I'm going to not spend half an hour looking at cars or motorcycles or whatever it is, it's saying, but don't you want to see just this one more picture or one more video? And it's right in line with the thing that I was just looking at. And it's even more dialed in, right? And so it's literally calling to you, right? So you're chemically getting addicted to the dopamine, and yet we don't have to do, typically dopamine's it's a hormone, right? It's a powerful thing. It's great, God-given. Normally we have to work for it, but the iPhone technology means we can get the dopamine without working for it, right? I have a good friend, Matt Chenard, that one of his coaching businesses, his tagline is earn your dopamine, right? Like earn it, go do the hard thing to get the dopamine. Don't just sit and scroll on your phone. But it is knowing that distraction is a major killer of relationships and intimacy, and then knowing that we get addicted to the dopamine, and then we also have this phone or this technology that's calling to us. Again, I'm not anti-technology. It sounds like I am a lot of the time because I tend to talk this way, but technology brought you and I together. We'd never be having this conversation without technology.
Yeah.
It's got some goodness in it, no question. But man, knowing some of the trap doors that are part of technology and how we have to create boundary, we have to create some guidelines and rules. Otherwise, it will lead us by the nose, like a I don't know what the analogy would be, like a shepherd leading a sheep, by the collar. I don't know. I mean, you're going to get led by that tool, and it's not to a good place, right? It's going to distract you from your spouse, the intimacy with your family, being present, all those things that you said. I love that, the number one thing you said was attention. Like, pay attention to your family, your spouse, your loved ones, your friends, the people you're with in the moment. Not how often do you go to restaurants, see people sitting at a table, everyone's looking at their own phone, right?
It's fascinating. And those of listeners that are parents, and again, I'm doing another podcast. I did a podcast on parenting, and the feedback was, we want to know more about parenting teenagers. Yeah. And, we know this intuitively. I'm sure the listeners know this, yet how do we break the habit? Because the biggest gift you can give your children is presence.
Yeah.
The two things that leaders bring, that parents bring in relationship, is connection and direction. Yeah, that's all children want. Connect with me and give me some direction, give me some expectation, give me some boundaries. And so two things. One is, if you're constantly distracted, it's difficult to be present with your children. And secondly, without putting any guilt on the listeners, it's an interesting role model if you're on your device saying to your 14-year-old son, get off the computer
games. Get off your
phone. You know what I mean? Like, again, without feeling guilty, it's, they learn from what you do, not what you say.
Yeah.
And so the benefits are huge. And if we think about the challenges for young boys, young men, if we think about the opportunity we have for a lot of the listeners as fathers and our daughters as well, this is such a fundamental, and it's easier than you think.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think, I've got to sit cross-legged and meditate for 2 hours. I've got to become the Dalai Lama, or it's not that. There are simple tools that you teach, that I teach, where we can start to unwind and slow down this busy mind. Yeah. And the rewards are just, again, the deepest desire for the masculine is freedom. Freedom comes from the inside out. Free yourself from that busy mind. Free yourself from being trapped, by that busy mind, by that addicted mind, by that, inner critic. Because, my personal mantra, Eric, is don't die with the music in you. Come on, guys. Like, this is our gig. This is our chance, to be the best version of yourself, as difficult as it may feel, wherever you are on the hero's journey with married, mortgage, business, kids. There is support there. And if you can just feel or see a glimmer of change and reach out, then there's such a beautiful, rich life available, to really ignite, your magnificence. That's my invitation.
Love that. I love that you talk about the magnificence of men. You coach a lot of entrepreneurs and high performers, leaders, men that are for all intents and all visibility, very successful, right? By worldly standards, very successful. May have a lot of inner turmoil, may have a lot of brokenness in their lives, but visually you'd say, wow, this guy's got it all going on. And yet they're coming to you for help, and you're trying to help them connect with that magnificence. What are some of the things that are sort of staples that you recommend, or that you find coming up again and again with your clients as being great tools and great practices?
Yeah, and I think if I put the clients into two categories, so I do work with a lot of executive leaders, high profile, in larger organizations. And I also work with a lot of men who may run their own business, lawyers, engineers, builders, landscapers, because, there's so many men in that demographic. And as I mentioned, typically my client base are early 40s to mid 50s. Married, mortgage, business, business or leadership, and children. Yeah. And so when I work with executives, what I find with executives in that demographic is there's usually 3 buckets that they fall into. Yeah. Some of them, maybe in their mid-40s to late 40s, they're actually wanting to transition out of corporate. Some of them can't see the way forward for the next 10 or 15 years in those big systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've already kind of made that decision. And so that group are really looking for, how do I find my purpose? How do I find the next expression of myself? And one of the key things I teach is it's from the inside out. And I'll talk to you more about those practices.
Yeah.
The other is there's another group in there who are basically, one of the most threatened, quote unquote, groups in the workforce at the moment are 50-year-old white men in corporate.
Yeah.
It's not good or bad. It's just that we know that group of men are the loneliest on the planet through the studies. We also know they're feeling very threatened because they've had entitlement, they've had privilege, they've had opportunity, they have wealth, they've had a pretty good run. If you think of the US, if you get to the right school, get to the right college, get to the right organization, it's a pretty clear run. There's not a lot of barriers to entry if you're a white man over the last 30 years. A generalization.
Yeah.
What we're seeing, I think in a healthy way, is we're seeing a lot more diversity and inclusion, whether it's based on color, whether it's based on gender, whether it's based on, diversity. And so they're feeling very threatened. Yeah. And all we're doing is equaling the playing field. But because they've had that unconscious privilege, they're suddenly realizing what it's like to be not a minority group, but feel like a minority group.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of those men that I coach, it's about really giving them support to realize that, this is just leveling up the playing field. You don't have to feel anxious. You don't have to feel threatened. They want to understand more their blind spots, because that unconscious privilege for white men is so deeply ingrained,
Yeah.
And then the third group in that category, what I find is there's a lot of executives who are probably early 50s and they've got another good chapter in them in the corporate, but they're kind of burning out a bit and they want to know how to re-energize.
Yeah.
How can I make this last chapter full of energy, full of passion? How can I leave my mark? I want to stay here. I want to make a difference in this organization, but I'm just feeling a bit jaded. I'm a bit lost. They're not under threat. They just need the tools to really, again, don't die with the music in you. It's like really the next 5 years, before I get my redundancy or whatever it might be, I want to give my best. Does that make sense? Can you feel that kind of?
It does. I want to go back to the one you said before about the group that's feeling disconnected, the white male, because I see this too. And how I hear that, because certainly I know a large number of white males that are in positions of executive or middle management and or authority leadership that feel like I don't get it. I don't, and maybe it's the whole ingrained thing, like it's so ingrained, but it's like, man, now no one seems to care what I think. No one wants to hear from me. Like all of a sudden I'm in the corner. And how is that any better than what I'm hearing was going on all along, which was putting the other group, the non-white male, in the corner. And they're saying, I didn't really see or feel that. Like I had a lot of people of, a lot of feminine, a lot of females that I worked with that were above me, beside me, below me in terms of hierarchy, and different races that were above me, beside me, below me in terms of hierarchy. And I gave them respect. I wanted to hear what they had to say. To me, it was about performance, not about skin color or gender. And yet now all I hear is, shut your mouth, white dude. Be quiet in the corner. You've got all this privilege. We don't want to hear from you anymore. And there's a lot of anger I've seen, like a lot of anger and resentment coming from that group. Like, this is wrong. Like, you're telling me that I'm bad because I was doing X, but now aren't you doing the exact same thing to me? Right. By virtue of my skin color and sex versus what I know or what I can bring or my performance. I'm curious because it seems like you have a lot of knowledge in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. There's two things I'd say to those listeners. One is you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And so you may think it was a level playing field, that you respected the minority groups, that you listened to them. Yeah. But it's not the case. Your unconscious filters are so strong. And this isn't a judgment or a criticism. It's just a level of not knowing. And so, for example, one of the simple examples, when I do work in corporate, and, there's some great literature coming out now about, so if you think about a white man going for a jog, going for a run.
Yeah.
Yep. In, suburban Dallas.
Sure.
Yep. Where you are.
Done it a bunch.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So think about that experience. Think about, basically I've got to find the time. Hopefully the weather's good, get my runners on. Yep. Basically I'm going for a run. Yep. It's very exhilarating. It's very freeing. It's, you're unwinding your mind a little bit. You're getting some endorphins. Yeah. And you come back, you feel refreshed. Now, if you ask a woman what that experience is like, for a woman to go for a run, it is hyper vigilance about her safety. There is no time to really relax. Now, most men, these men in that, don't realize that. They're like, she's going for a run. I'm looking after the kids. Go for it.
Right.
Yeah, great. Relax. Do what I did. Unwind. And so when I work with clients, they don't realize for women to go for a run, safety is the biggest issue. They are constantly hyper vigilant about their safety. Is it okay here? What's that guy going to do? Should I turn this corner? Should I have something in my hand ready just in case? Can you see how just that one example is we don't know what we don't know?
Yeah, I can see that. Although I don't know, again, my experience, because I am a runner, right? So you've hit upon an area that's near and dear to my heart. So I do run and I run with men and women and groups and sometimes individuals. And I've run upon women I run early morning, so often in the dark. I've run upon women in the dark, running alone with headphones on. And I'm a big non-headphone guy, right? Because to me, it's two things. One, it's about the experience of running. Like I want to hear my thoughts, my breath. I want to hear my heart. I want to think, and I can't do it as well when I have headphones in. But the other is I want to hear the cars. I want to hear who's around me. I want some situational awareness. And when I want to run up upon a woman, if she's got headphones on and I'm passing her from behind where she doesn't see me in the dark, she almost always startle jump. And a guy would do the same, right? If someone ran past me in the dark and I didn't hear him coming, I'd startle jump. And I always think, like what you just said, man, that seems risky. Like why would you take away your situational awareness and wear headphones in the dark, run alone? That seems dangerous. And it's almost like I like the father figure me feels like saying, but I don't. But man, don't do that. Like at least keep one out, right? Keep one out so you got some amount of hearing. So I've seen, I get what you're saying, and I believe it's true, but I don't know if it's always true. At least my experience, sure, it's not always true. And like anything, right? We have rules that are designed to cover a bell curve, right? And not every instance. But the context, the generalization is women have to be more vigilant when they do something like that for their own safety. And
exactly. And the bigger context is working with lots of women in the workforce, in middle management and upper management. As a generalization, white men don't realize what they go through to be heard, to be seen. It's the barriers to entry are huge.
I get that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and so that's the first thing I'd say to that group is be curious.
Yeah.
Yep. Not victims.
Yeah.
Start to inquire, what did the minority groups go through? What did the women go through? Lean in, which leads to the 4 pillars. The future of male leadership. I'm actually doing a workshop in Paris in a month's time. at the Pont Business School about the future of male leadership. Yeah,
Nice.
because this is a conversation we need to have, particularly for the corporate clients. And there's some incredible work being done supporting women in leadership, which I absolutely support and I think so important. Yet not many people are actually having the conversation about male leadership.
Yeah.
What is the future of male leadership? And a lot of my clients in their 40s and early 50s are going, we know what doesn't work. I don't want to be that leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we look at the men around the world, political, business. Yep. And again, these are huge generalizations. Yet what we see is a lot of distortion and dysfunction of male leadership. And again, there's a whole podcast we could do on that. Yet if we come into the future, and this is what I'd say to those men who are feeling disenfranchised, who are feeling frustrated, marginalized in the workplace, the 4 pillars of male leadership. And again, we can unpack them in another podcast. The first is, if you really want to be an effective leader, it's about connection. So the 4 pillars, I'll mention the 4 pillars and we can go back. So it's connection, it's collaboration, it's compassion, and it's curiosity.
Yeah.
They're the 4 pillars. And so connection starts with connection with self. So coming right back to distraction to presence.
Yeah.
If you haven't got a daily practice of reflection and connection as a leader, middle management, senior management, no chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't be present. If you can't be present with your team, if you can't be present with your colleagues.
Yeah. That goes back to the hero's journey. It's the archetype of the king versus the tyrant versus the weakling, right? Someone who's not connected to themselves, that has fear, is either going to be in the tyrant or the weakling category. I can't remember which one it is, but not the king, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The king is in touch with himself. He understands himself. He's in control of himself.
Exactly. Connected with himself, an embodied connection. As I say, attuning to what's going on, attuning to your feelings, attuning to your presence, attuning to your thoughts, and attuning to the other person. Relational leadership is key.
Yeah.
Relational awareness. Where is my attention? How attuned am I to what's going on here?
Yes.
Yeah. The second, and these aren't linear, the second is collaboration. So the classic male leadership, so the masculine energy in us is all about autonomy. It's all about agency. It's all about efficiency. Yeah, it's not about inclusion. It's not about collaboration. It's not about what can I give. It's about what can I get. And that's the fundamental shift in collaboration. So are you collaborating with the person who works with you? Are you collaborating with your team? Do you truly understand what collaboration is? Instead of leading by hierarchy, leading by the one who needs to know it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so collaboration for the masculine is huge. It's huge. Compassion, essentially, the easy way to define compassion is empathy.
Yeah.
It's more than empathy, yet the key is, one, obviously compassion and empathy for yourself, but also how can you put yourself in the shoes of the other person?
Yes.
Have you ever looked at the world through the lens of a black man or a black woman?
Yeah.
Have you ever even explored that possibility? Yeah. Or a woman in a boardroom? Because if you got no empathy for that, you're not leading.
Yeah.
You're just filtering it through your experience and your collusion with your white mates who are saying we're now the victims.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, this is a bit of a challenge to those listeners. Yet, compassion and empathy, you got to get in their shoes.
Yeah.
The feedback from the women executives I hear is like, filling space and creating space is one of the biggest things in the boardroom. So that the extreme of that is the mansplaining. Yeah. And men don't even know they're doing it.
Yeah.
it's this, you don't know what you don't know, but so many men fill the space in the boardroom. They're just hot air, filling the space, mansplaining the world through their lens, trying to be important and valuable and contributing. Yeah. And the feminine sitting there go, give me some room, man. Give me some air.
Yeah.
This is empathy. This is compassion. This is awareness. Yeah. And so, again, notice. And the last piece is curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Curiosity, possibility, imagination. Yeah, the what's emerging. Again, one of the biggest feedbacks from women in the boardroom is, a woman will say something 10 minutes into the meeting, and 30 minutes later, it'll be the CEO's idea.
Right.
This is happening today, guys. Yeah. I work in corporates globally. So again, to that listener who's feeling marginalized and victimized, step up, grow up, get with the program. This is going on. Yeah. Yeah. I really, really call them forth, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you want to know, give me a ring, because I can give you testimonies around the globe. I can go into your organization tomorrow and speak to 5 women who'll give you direct examples of what they've experienced. I'm not saying it's that you.
Sure.
What I'm saying is this is what they've experienced.
Yep.
And your role is actually to be an ally for the feminine, to be an ally for the marginalized. Yeah. And to get off the victim energy and go, what do I need to change to really contribute? Instead of sitting in the corner feeling like everyone's telling me to shut up.
Right.
Going, oh, okay, what can I shift? Right. How can I collaborate more? How can I be more curious, more empathy? So pretty challenging sort of
it's
throw
good
that out
man.
there.
I mean, so all those things, I mean, I think regardless of your opinion on how this shows up in the workplace, I think it's human nature, right? I mean, if you look at Stephen Covey, right, and the whole idea of seek first to understand before being understood, right? I mean, that's being curious, right? And showing empathy and being empathetic and compassionate. That's biblical, right? I mean, that we're all called to that. I think so. As humans, we certainly, I think we all look first within yourself. You want to improve an organization, improve a group, improve a situation. Look first to yourself, improve yourself, right? As opposed to, that's biblical as well, right? Seek first, remove the board from your own eye before I worry about the splinter in your eye.
Yeah.
And so this whole idea of being compassionate, collaboration, that's leadership, man. I mean, right? I totally 100% agree, right? Leaders collaborate. Leaders don't dictate. They want to learn from the team, and they should eat last, right? They should sit last. It's not about me winning as the leader. It's about everyone else. How do I engage, empower the team to do what they are capable of doing so the team can rise and they can take the glory, right? That's what leaders do. They make everyone else better. They don't take the glory and stand first, right? They should be in the back, I think. But but it's hard, right? Because human nature is so self-serving, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the systems are challenging. Be interesting when you talk to your clients, and ask them to do some reflection of the last 3 months. Particularly those clients who are in leadership roles, and say, okay, let's have a look at your last 3 months. Who are you collaborating with?
Yeah.
How much intentional empathy have you had?
Yeah. For
your team? What are you doing to connect more with yourself? You know what I mean? Like just as a learning tool, in your coaching practice, because, when I do it, people get it intellectually and then they go, oh, shoot. I've just had a look at, I'm still running that hierarchical model where I've got to get my KPIs up or I don't get my bonus.
Yeah.
And as much as I'd love to spend more time with my team, I don't have time. I've got to get the target.
Right.
It's like, it's very pervasive, that old model.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I want to be respectful of your time, because I know we're coming past the hour and we're getting close to when we got to shut it down. But any thoughts on sort of morning practices and or daily practices that you recommend for your clients or for yourself that you really find to be sort of game changers or just so valuable to you?
Yeah, I think one of the great books that's been republished recently is The Miracle Morning. If you could, I can't remember the author, but if you put that in the show notes, and I do enjoy, and I'll talk more specifically. So what he did, and he's republished it, he broke it down. So his pivotal change was when he developed this routine in the mornings, and he talks about an hour every morning, which is, it's doable, but it's a big commitment. And I'm not sure you need to start with an hour. So he talks about life, his life saver, and his saver, SAVER, the things he talks about. S is for silence. A is for affirmation. V is for visualization. E is for exercise. And R is for reading or listening to inspiring. Yeah. And so I love that little summary. And again, his theory is if you can carve out an hour in the morning, these are the anchors. Even if you did 10 minutes of each and had 10 minutes to spare, And so what I teach is some very fundamental practices. I've got 5 key practices that I teach. Yeah, and they build on each other. And essentially 10 minutes a day, if you do these practices, I'm a big fan of the morning as well. I really feel you set yourself up. I think it's the holy hour in many traditions. Yeah. And the big one that I do a lot of work with men is the difference between commitment and sitting on the fence. You know yourself. Feel the energy of when you're committed to something, Eric, or when you're kind of sitting on the fence. Yeah. Yeah. And you as a runner and athlete, if you've committed to a half marathon or something like that, when you commit, I choose to have no more choice. It's a different energy. You're all in your body. I'm in. Yep. Yeah. When you sit on the fence, it's like, maybe it's cold today. I won't go for a run. And, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I got a sore leg. Yep. Yeah. It's exhausting. It's a totally different energy. And I invite any of the listeners to feel the difference. And so what I encourage and give people tools is, how do we get commitment? How do we get 10 minutes a day? Because if you can do that 6 weeks, game changer. Yeah, I've just run an online program for a group of men around the globe, 23 men. Yeah. And that's the foundation, is how to get more present, less distracted through my daily practice. And these practices are a combination of, the traditional teachings, because embodied presence. So mindfulness is a great start. Mindfulness is like opening the door and starting to notice your thinking mind, starting to notice where your attention goes. Embodied presence is, how do I sustain, this attuned awareness, which is what I teach. Because if you can sustain attuned awareness to your thinking, to your feeling, to your body, to your energetic system, it's a game changer as a leader, as a husband, as a parent.
I love it, man. I love it. Fantastic. Bodhi, what's next for you, man? What are you excited about? What's on the plate?
Yeah, I'm so excited, as I mentioned. So I'm off to Europe in a couple of weeks, and I've got a 3-day nature-based retreat in the UK. Beautiful property just in the wilderness. So just a dozen men. We're going deep. I've got a retreat in Ibiza, which is a beautiful island off Spain, nice. Where we're, again, taking the men. I've got this beautiful workshop day we're running in Paris about the future of male leadership with the Le Pont Business School. And I do that a couple of times a year. I may be in the US mid-year. I've got a retreat. I've got a collaboration with a partner in California who's invited me to come and help with a retreat. So, fantastic. So that's kind of my exploration. And then, just loving the work. I'm starting today another online program for male leaders around the globe. I think I've got 19 men from all different countries, and we just meet every 2 weeks for an hour and a half, and I just take them through these teachings. We do practices. For any of the listeners, the thing is that you need to find a community of men where you can practice these things. You got to learn the skills, but you got to practice it. Where do I practice vulnerability? Where do I practice presence? Where do I practice emotional intelligence? And so that's what we do in group And so, yeah, exciting start to the year.
Fantastic, man. Where can people keep up with you? Where do they find you?
Yeah, the website, www.Bodhi Aldridge, BODHIALDRIDGE. Got a free mini course offering the listeners, and it's literally that, www.freeminicourse.com. It's a 5-part series about freedom and flow. And on my website or all the podcast apps, my podcast is called True Freedom. And I take listeners through with one of my clients. We go through some of the challenges men are meeting around parenting, around relationship, around leadership. So, yep, there's plenty of opportunities. Always available to, if anyone feels called and wants to get support on what's next, through my website, you can reach out. Do I need to work with Eric? Do I need to work with Bodhi? Do you know someone locally who can help me? As you know, my passion is to ignite the inherent magnificence in men. So many beautiful men who have just forgotten their magnificence, forgotten who they really are. And you and I are here to inspire them, to support them, to love them, to be the best version of themselves.
Amen. Well said, man. Bodhi, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks so much for everything you shared with the listener. And I just I can't thank you enough, man. Humbled that you're here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Been a delight. Thank you to all the listeners. Hopefully there's a couple of learnings in there.
For sure. To our listeners, thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. Always humbled that you do that. If you'd write a review, give us a rating, share the program with a friend. All those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.